The cruel irony of avoidant psychology is that they only recognize your value after they've successfully pushed you away. While you were there, giving them everything they claimed to want, they treated your love like background noise. Now that you're gone and the silence is deafening, suddenly they can hear exactly what they lost. They're experiencing the textbook avoidant nightmare where their fear of intimacy destroyed the very connection they desperately needed. The scarcity value recognition. Avoidants are wired to devalue anything that's readily available to them, including your love. When you were consistently present, caring, and invested in the relationship, their brain categorized your affection as abundant and therefore worthless. They took your devotion for granted because it felt safe and predictable, like having unlimited access to something they didn't have to work for. The moment you withdrew that availability, their entire value system flipped. Suddenly, your attention became a scarce resource, and scarcity triggers their competitive instincts in ways that abundance never could. They're not missing you because they've discovered new feelings. They're missing you because their psychology is hardwired to want what they can't have. Your absence has activated their chase response that was completely dormant when you were freely giving yourself to them. They didn't appreciate your presence because presence felt suffocating, but they're obsessing over your absence because absence feels like a challenge to conquer rather than a relationship to nurture. The idealization after loss syndrome. Now that you're gone, they're experiencing selective memory that edits out all the reasons they pulled away and focuses only on what they're missing. Their brain is creating a highlight reel of your best moments while conveniently forgetting how trapped and suffocated they felt when those moments were actually happening. They're romanticizing the very intimacy that terrified them when it was real and available. The emotional connection they ran from is now being remembered as perfect because it exists only in their memory rather than demanding their presence and vulnerability in reality. They can miss your love without having to risk anything to receive it. This idealization serves their avoidant psychology perfectly because it allows them to feel deep emotions about you without having to actually engage with the messy reality of genuine intimacy. They can pine for what you offered while remaining safely distant from having to show up and reciprocate it consistently. The control loss panic response. What they're really missing isn't you specifically, it's the control they had when you were chasing them. They got addicted to the power dynamic where they could regulate the relationship temperature while you did all the emotional labor. Your absence has stripped away their ability to control the narrative, and that loss of control is driving them crazy. They miss having someone who would tolerate their inconsistent behavior while providing consistent love in return. They're not missing the responsibility of being a good partner. They're missing the ego boost of being unconditionally loved despite being conditionally available. They want back the relationship where they held all the cards. The panic they're feeling isn't about losing your love. It's about losing their position of power in the dynamic. They can't handle that you've flipped the script and made yourself unavailable, forcing them to experience what it feels like to want someone who doesn't want them back. The ego injury recognition. Your departure has inflicted a massive wound to their ego because it challenges their core belief that they're the prize in any relationship. They built their entire identity around being the one people chase, pursue, and try to win over. You leaving suggests that maybe they weren't as valuable as they thought they were. This ego injury is forcing them to confront the possibility that their behavior actually has consequences and that people won't tolerate being treated poorly indefinitely. They're not missing your love. They're mourning the loss of someone who made them feel special and important without requiring them to earn that treatment. The fact that you walked away despite everything you shared is threatening their self-image as someone who's inherently worthy of unconditional devotion. They're realizing that even the most patient, loving person has limits, and they pushed you past yours. The replacement reality check. They're discovering that your type of genuine, unconditional love isn't as common as they assumed. Everyone else they encounter wants something back, expects consistency, or demands emotional reciprocity. They're learning that your willingness to love them despite their flaws was rare and valuable, not the baseline they're entitled to expect from everyone. The shallow connections they can easily access aren't filling the void you left because those people don't know them well enough to love them through their difficult moments. They're missing having someone who saw their worst behavior and chose to stay anyway, something they're realizing most people won't do. They're experiencing the harsh reality that finding someone else who will tolerate their emotional unavailability while providing emotional availability in return isn't as simple as they thought. Your patience and understanding weren't normal relationship features. They were special gifts they didn't appreciate until they were gone. The growth forced recognition. For the first time, they're being forced to examine whether their avoidant patterns are actually protecting them or sabotaging them. Your absence is making them question whether their fear of intimacy is worth the loneliness it creates. They're having to confront the possibility that their defense mechanisms are causing more pain than they're preventing. They're realizing that pushing away everyone who gets too close isn't sustainable if they want genuine human connection. The pattern that felt protective when you were there feels destructive now that you're gone. They're being forced to evaluate whether their avoidant strategies are actually serving them or just keeping them isolated. Your departure has created the first real consequence they've experienced for their emotional unavailability. They're learning that their behavior doesn't just affect the people they push away, it also robs them of the connections they actually need and want. The timing tragedy. The cruelest part of avoidant psychology is that they only develop appreciation after it's too late to matter. They're experiencing genuine regret and longing for what you offered, but only after they've proven themselves incapable of receiving it. They've learned your value through loss rather than presence. They're mourning not just losing you, but losing the version of themselves that could have been worthy of your love. They're realizing they had something precious and destroyed it through their own fears and limitations. The timing of their enlightenment makes it tragic rather than redemptive.